Thank you, Darren. Hello, everybody. It's kind of nice to reconnect with you guys on this platform. I think for one thing, for sure, is COVID has kind of made us more tech savvy in a way, and we kind of overcome the traditional ways of doing things and improvising and how we can kind of overcome the challenges of communications, right? I think that's one thing COVID for sure has kind of taught all of us to do well in this area. And just to introduce myself a little bit before we kind of get into the topic for today, I'm Kitsun, based in Singapore. I've been with Motorola for 20 years and has been all along a two-way radio person, right? So I kind of understand what it takes, what it is, and the joy and the passion for two-way radios, technology, and all that. Besides that, if you look behind me, there are some Legos behind me, an Avid Lego collector, right? So some of my hobbies. So again, it'll be very much, I think, even looking forward, I'm looking forward to kind of meet you guys in person, right? If there's any opportunity in the future, yeah, definitely. So at this point, I would like to just kind of start with the topic for today, the WAVE PTX, kind of like a refresher, and to hopefully kind of remind us of what are the components, what are the things that are included within this whole portfolio. Without much ado, let's start. So we're gonna start with the quick introduction, exactly what WAVE PTX is all about. What's the value? How does it come to complement to the radio systems? And the basic components, the main components of what makes PTX. And then we'll go to summary. We should be taking about 40 to 45 minutes for this session. And then we'll spend the rest of the time for Q&A at the end. So for the introduction, I usually start with radios, right? Like I said, I'm kind of like a radio person from my background, doing radios for many years. And well, if we are all familiar with radios, we know that there are advantages of using radio. They are reliable, they are very dependent, you have a very fixated kind of a coverage, you know how the operation works, and you can count on it, right? But however, we know that there are limitations as well. Yeah, things that we wish the radio would be better. Number one, maybe the coverage. We would maybe hope that the coverage is way larger. Of course, we can do that with radio, just extend the repeater, but that also means that we will need to invest in the hardwares, the repeaters, and over time, we need to make sure that it's running, we gotta maintain it, we gotta make sure the antenna is tuned, and yeah, the list goes on, right, in terms of all the what it takes to do that kind of wide area coverage. The other part of it is that have you guys ever tried to transmit data over the RF channel? I personally have done that using the TurboNet applications, right? You can just kind of use the RF as the data pipe to kind of send from one PC to another PC. Obviously, we know that the speed is really slow, right? It's like we're talking about kilobits. So to send a simple, what, 100K size kind of file will take even minutes, right? And well, when we look at all this in the whole total picture, this is where kind of the WAVE PTX comes in. Yeah, the WAVE PTX. In Motorola, we kind of offer WAVE PTX as a complement to our radio system. Although you can run it independently as it is, standalone, it does work that way as well. But in most cases, we see the whole benefit when we kind of marry the two systems together, right? We'll talk about that a little bit more. So what essentially WAVE PTX is all about is to bring the push-to-talk service onto the broadband kind of LTE network. So all of us today, we are all very familiar with broadband. Each of us, needless to say, carries a smartphone, right? In today's world, today's age, smartphones works with broadband. You have all the multimedia capabilities. At a push of a button, we can access video, YouTubes, and all that, right? Which is very good, right? And to kind of bring this onto this platform, it allows us, it opens up a new avenue of using the services. things that I just mentioned earlier, the limitations of coverage, the limitations of bandwidth, these are the answer, right? This is how WAVE kind of address it. Now, if we look at WAVE on the second bullet, it says there, this is kind of like a service, subscription service from Motorola, which is true because this is kind of like a OPEX versus the CAPEX, where we gotta invest in infrastructure, lay out the repeaters and all that. In this case, we are not. We are kind of utilizing the telco's coverage for the data pipe, and Motorola kind of supports the WAVE engine to support the PDD functionality. And users, all we need to do is kind of get the subscription going for Monday. Yeah. So, well, the benefits of that is that it saves a lot of resource and work to kind of maintain all this infrastructure within the country and within the region, right? So it kind of bring off the loading to Motorola, and we kind of work on this subscription model. Again, this is a cloud-based. We have a cloud instance in Australia for the ANZ market. Again, this is not limited to only Motorola devices, but to other cell phone, right, smart devices, Android, iOS, to kind of enjoy these feature sets as well. Now, this is where we kind of break the WAVE PTX into the 3 major buckets. And I'm going to go through one by one so that at least we kind of have a good sense of what it is. And this helps us to break down the components as well, right? Sometimes to kind of look at WAVE as a whole, it's difficult to kind of explain the whole thing from end to end. But if we kind of divide them into smaller pieces, I hope this will be a good bite size, right? Divide and conquer sometimes to kind of look into the smaller topics. And maybe we can kind of speak on the topic that is most relevant to our end users. So the first bucket, I would say, the first component is really on the mobile app. So when we say mobile app, this is something that we can download from the Play Store, and we can use it on the BYOD device, right? Bring your own device. The second portion is really the dispatch. It's a kind of like a web client that you can log in anywhere and kind of take control of your fleet. The radios that is within your control, you can view them at the screen of your PC. And then, of course, the third portion is really the dedicated WAVE devices from Motorola. And we're gonna see what are the outstanding, what are the differences, when should we use BYOD, when should we use the dedicated devices. So now let's move into the first bucket, which is the software, the app itself on the mobile phone. So now this is something new. I think in the past, we all know that in order to enjoy PDD kind of services, you gotta buy a radio or you gotta buy a hardware. But in this case, we know that the cell phone is kind of become more and more powerful in a way, right? It's your camera, it's your calculator, it's a calendar. Now it's your radio, just to add on to the list, right? So by simply installing the app is free to download. As long as you have a paid subscription with the WAVE, you have an account, log in, and you should be able to push the talk at the touch of your finger, right? On the desktop, on the smartphone, tablets, you name it, right? And once you kind of set up with your co-workers, each one has the WAVE, just talk like a radio, push to talk, right? And of course, it's cross-connected to some of the other devices like the TLK100s, the TLK150, the Ions, the Evolve. Some of the feature sets, by having the phone, we know that there are lots of capability. There's cameras, there's GPS and all that, right? So having to say, push to talk functionality, your location services, you can see where you are, real-time presence, meaning that the moment you're online, your colleagues will be able to see you online. Text messages, typing on the full keypad, right? That's the way to go for text messages. You can send photo, video, and in fact, you can even have a voice message fallback. So these are the additional features if you look at WAVE PTX compared to a standard radio. Again, This is just to give you an idea for those who are new. If you have not seen the WAVE application, this is how it looks like. Very clean, very straightforward. The emphasis is always on the PTT button, the blue color round icon that you just hit it, and you're able to kind of connect straight to your talk groups. And of course, there are other things that are very similar to radio. You can change your channel, just swipe it, you get your channel numbers. You can change your zone, and at the bottom bar, you will see all the icons for the multimedia purposes, right? So the messages, the locations, the video, image, audio recordings. Yeah. So moving on. So some of the features, some of the features, like just mentioned, the presence. You can always set your status. If you're in a meeting, you don't want your audio to kind of disturb, so you can always put a do not disturb status. There's group call, private call. You have your contact list. You can always put a star to add them to your favorite. You can kind of have the soft PTT meaning the button on the screen, or the hard PTT buttons, right? Using one of your volume buttons. And of course, background calling, meaning that you can turn off your screen and your audio still comes through. Yeah, so you don't have to worry that you're missing the calls. And in a case, if you really miss the call, you have the alert on your screen as well, as in you can see who is actually trying to reach you. You have all the historical communications, and of course the voice message fallback. So again, earlier I mentioned about multimedia capability. This is where WAVE PTX kind of shine, right? Because we know that it's running on the broadband. Broadband has the bandwidth to deal with large files. So sending picture, video, we're talking about video, is a breeze, right? Just send it over the chat, just like what we used to do in WhatsApp and all that. The layout, very conventional, which we are all very used to. All the text in a format that's laid out to see who said what, and there's a timestamp. We can see who replied and what's going on. So very similar to the WhatsApp that we are using today. So in that case, yeah, I would say that it's very user friendly. Now the next one is really on the location. This is where we can share our location with our colleagues, with our top group members, the real-time location. So just utilizing the GPS that we have on our devices, the map. Now that we have a bigger screen, we can show exactly where we are. So that's good, and we can even find addresses. Look for the map capability, just like how we use a Google Map, right? Drop your location, you can see a street view, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Now, again, this is where the communication thread lies, right? We can have a historical. Who are the people that kind of spoke to the group? The names with the IDs and everything will be recorded. And then if you have unread messages, those will be highlighted as well, so that you don't miss them. You can always open them up to kind of read what it is. Moving forward, this is where the second bucket is about the WAVE dispatch. Now, this is something optional. Perhaps not every user will probably need it. But again, it's a nice tool. It's something that we can offer to our users to kind of have a control over their fleet. So now if we look at what WAVE is, the dispatcher is all about, is really a PC, can be a simple PC, log into the web client. And once you have your credentials or check in, your username and your password, you should be able to see your fleet. And if you look at the layout, it's very clean. Everything is laid out at one glance. So there's no special applications to be installed because this is a web client. You just have to go to your web browser, go into the link, sign in, and you're there. As simple as that. So to kind of zoom in a little bit about some of the features, what are the things that are included? Here we go, right? So first of all, most important, the PTT call. So by having a headset, just like what we are doing right now, hit the PTT button, we are talking to our top groups with the WAVE, right? And the presence, we are able to see who is online, the greens, the reds, what's going on at their top group. We are able to kind of see what are the alerts, all stated in the table form, and then the monitored top groups. Those are all your top groups layout on the top, very clean. Just hit at the box and then press the PDT. You're instantly connected to those top groups. And the last of all is the call logs, just more for your reference or for your record. You want to see what happened in the system. That's where all the logs are kind of captured. Of course, then now we move to the messaging. Nothing beats a full-fledged keyboard on your PC to kind of type and message, right? And that's that's one of the advantages of having a dispatch, a full-fledged keyboard to kind of type in, send it quickly. And if somebody replies, you can always see it clearly on a bigger screen. You can always have multiple screen, right? 2 screens to kind of split up the layout. Type it in. You can always attach photos, videos, documents, push it over to the receive site, and then they'll be able to view those footage as well. Moving on, location and map. This is another good feature. So now bringing from a small 5-inch display to a 14 or a 20-inch display on your PC, right? So that's something that may be helpful as well as a dispatcher to kind of coordinate with your team members. Sometimes they may need certain kind of help. And from a dispatcher standpoint, we are able to see who are some of the members that are nearby so that we can always dispatch them to look for the person and help them out on the ground, right? So again, this is very useful. We can always do a street view. You can zoom in. You can see the location of a person real time, the historical trail. There we go. Yep. So you can see where has the person gone to. Maybe from an end user standpoint, they may not like it, but in different aspect is that we are able to guarantee the safety of our workers, right? In a sense. Now, it's always good to kind of remind our users to say that, hey, this is not to kind of micromanage or even to track you, right? But it's really to be able to account for the person's safety. In case if the person is in an area that is they're not supposed to be in, could be dangerous, could be out of bounds. So that's where the dispatcher can come in and kind of alert the person, right? So in the name of safety, right? In the whole aspect of safety, this becomes very important. Yeah, we are not trying to control the person or something like that, but really to allow the person to work safely. That's the whole intention. Moving on. Next one, we're talking about some of the more advanced functionality. We're able to do video streaming. So both pull and push. When we say push means it's always initiated by the users on the mobile devices. That means you want to show the dispatcher or somebody else what is going on at your level. So you just hit the video, initiate the video, and then it'll be streamed at the dispatcher. Now, pull video means the dispatcher will be the ones that is initiating the video stream, right? So you can always get someone to point the camera, and then the dispatcher pulls the video to make sure that the dispatcher can see what's going on the ground. Now, this is something that radio technology, again, we can't do this because of the narrow band on the RF channel. With broadband, it opens up this horizon, this new avenue that we can use our tools to do this kind of video streaming. Sometimes it's difficult to use words, even words, to describe certain things, right? That's why we kind of play charade sometimes, right, to kind of describe the things. But by pictures or video, that sometimes can solve a problem at a very short time, right? Just send over the video, send over the picture. It kind of makes everybody understand this situation way faster. So here is kind of like the push video. So the ID of the person is always recorded to know who is the person who is streaming, right? and you can always have the historical. You can monitor what's going on. And of course, from the pull video, this is kind of like from the dispatcher. It has to be authorized, okay, and it's only available for the dispatcher. So don't worry if somebody else, yeah, they won't be able to kind of suddenly pull the video from your end. So dispatcher, and of course they need to be authorized to have this request. Some of the other advanced features, we call it the safeguard sets, feature sets. It's more for safety related, the emergency calling, the ambience listening, discrete listening, right? So we are very familiar with these features from a radio world, very similar, the remote monitor, where we kind of open up the mic on the mobile devices to hear what's going on. Again, this is something that we are not trying to do for the sake of tracking the person or trying to spy on the person, but really this is where the safety aspects comes in, right? Sometimes the person may not be answering the devices even when called upon. We do not know. It could be a moment of distress. It could be a moment when the person is unconscious. There's the possibilities are there. So by having an ambient listening, a discrete listening, we're able to hear what is going on from the user standpoint without the person's initiations, right? And that helps us as a dispatcher to kind of overcome certain challenges and also to make sure that the workers are safe. The next one, the LMR interoperability. That's where Motorola is one of the key strength again, right? Where we can link the radio, the motor turbo radios with our WAVE. As I mentioned way earlier, there are limitations to our radio systems, radio technology as a whole, but that's where the WAVE complements the two systems together. Yeah. We can do a remote user check to make sure that the person is active or not. You can disable or enable the device or the account, right? If the device is lost. Communication based on the location. Yeah, these are the advantage of having the GPS and the map. So with that, I think these are some of the explanation. That's what I just mentioned. What is it all about to kind of do the discrete listening, the ambient listening, right? The location base and all that. So I'm just gonna go to the next portion. Now this is gonna be the last bucket or the last section where we have all the different devices from Motorola. Starting with the TLK 100 and 150. Now, as we kind of venture into WAVE a couple of years back from Motorola standpoint, there was discussion to say, hey, should we develop a purpose-built device for WAVE? Should we even come out with all these devices? Because since WAVE can be used on mobile devices, the BYODs, right? So do we still need a device on its own? So the answer was yes, of course, yeah, definitely. That's where kind of took us to the TLK 100 and 150 today. Now, when we did the market research, we also hear there are customers who prefer physical PTT buttons. The PTT buttons on the screen just simply doesn't cut it, right? It's too troublesome. You gotta wake up your screen, you gotta touch it. Sometimes you're wearing gloves, you're wearing thick kind of a glove, which doesn't allow that kind of function. So a physical PTT button, that's what we hear. Yeah. Secondly, we hear that the device needs to be more durable compared to a phone, right? And a lot of us sometimes we do not want to risk our phone on the job. We risk it damaging the phone, right? The screen, which easily cracks if we drop it. Sometimes you may not be able to hear the audio because the audio on the phone is simply not loud enough. That's why the phone doesn't work. And perhaps maybe the phone isn't allowed into the facility. It could be an IS or it could be some environment that doesn't allow your personal phone. So we hear this kind of while we are doing the research. And that kind of brings us to the TLK100, being a device that is purpose-built. It has the same PTT kind of design with a radio. In fact, it looks like a radio. And if you look at the antenna, to be honest, you don't really need that antenna over there because it's running off the LTE, right? But it gives the user the feel and the I would say nostalgic feel of still having a radio. Yeah, and users love it, right? They like the look and feel of a radio and the durability as well. So just to dive in a little bit, the WAVE PTXL TLK, the top 100. So some of the high level functionality, we have a rocker switch on the top to kind of change the channel. We have a info button to kind of display the channel, the battery status and all that. The push to talk button on the left side. The other advantage is that if you realize the battery is removable, something that I think has long gone in our mobile devices on the phone, right? We used to have that, but over the years, it's all now built-in batteries. We can't change it on the go. And if we were to use this device on a day-to-day work tool, we will realize that having the replaceable battery is a good thing, right? Because sometimes we run out of juice, we just want to replace it, quickly get back to work, right? And there is the what do you call it, accessory port on the other side. You can always connect the headsets, and then you have a loudspeaker on the front. So that is again one of the fundamental values of having a dedicated device is loud audio. So some of the accessories, if you get this device, will be the carry case, the holster, the charger, USB chargers, and of course you can get spare batteries. And along with that, there are other very similar to a radio kind of family, right? The available accessories. There is the energy, where you have the batteries, the chargers, the single unit, the multi-unit chargers, the carry case solutions, the holsters, right, and the clips, the antennas, depending on the bands that okay, in this case, the antenna is really to hold the color bands, something that we kind of allow the users to quickly identify their radios, right, based on the color. And then on the rightmost is the audio accessories. You have the one wire surveillance, the two wire surveillance. Yep. Moving on, the mobile radio form factor. So again, we do hear there is a need for installation within the vehicle or on the desk mount, right? And this is again, it looks exactly like a typical radio, right? Like our mono turbo radio, but in fact, it is not. It's running off the broadband, and it has the capability, GPS, such as GPS, the Wi-Fi connectivity, right? So in this case, perhaps Wi-Fi makes sense because then you can, it's kind of like a stationary on the desk in the office building. Yeah, we can always use the Wi-Fi. It has a SIM card to kind of go beyond in a vehicle, for example. And of course, it is IP54, just like the radio. So some of the components, right, which we all are familiar with, the microphone, where we will kind of hook it on the vehicle, right, use it, the power cables, right, the antennas, so standard, and more accessories. So over here, there are things like the remote PTT buttons, which we can always attach a Velcro to our steering wheel, for example. So if the person is driving, he can always have a hands-free. So you don't have to reach out to the microphone, but really just press the PTT on the steering wheel. And then of course there are mics. There are different Bluetooth accessories that we can always go wireless. The external speakers, just to boost the audio. Maybe the radio is kind of installed at the back seat, under the seat. It's difficult to hear, right? So by having external speaker, we are making sure the audio comes in loud and clear. And of course, the mounting accessories as well. Very similar to our typical radio. Moving on, this is where it kind of gets a bit more spice, spice up the whole thing. This is where the motor turbo ion. I'm sure by now all of us have heard or have not seen or play with the motor turbo ion radio. This is a two-in-one device. By far, this is, I would say, the most advanced kind of device from the motor turbo family. It has LMR functionality and it has the broadband capability. So two-in-one, where we call it the converged device. So again, LMR being the reliable communication PTT. If a customer has this existing LMR system, you'll run on it. And then if we need the multimedia, right, the wide area coverage, the wide area connectivity, that's where we can switch to the WAVE system. So with a device that is full-fledged Android and having cameras, the multimedia aspect of things, we can do more than just voice. We can do scanners, because at the back of the device is a camera that we can quickly snap the scan, the barcodes and all that. They kind of act as a scanner. Acts as a radio with a dedicated push-to-talk button, right? We can act as a console with a larger display. We are able to see what's going on as well. And if this is something that you wanted to run on the vehicle, you can always hook it up, right, on a charger, and it becomes a portable device on your vehicles. So if we look at the radio portfolio, we are all familiar with the DP series, right? And this is really the premium tier. We realized that perhaps not every users would require an ion. Maybe within a group, 10% or 20% of the users may require this kind of device, where they used to carry a phone and a radio separately, right? Two devices. And this is where the opportunity comes in for us to kind of merge the two together. And instead of having to maintain so many devices, the phone, the radios and everything, now we are just handling one device. So again, just a refresher of the Ion. What are some of the key highlights? It's running on the Android. It has all the full Android Google certification. So if you have all the applications that you're running on your other users, usage, you can always run it here. Its dependability, right? It's Motorola radio design. It has the IP68, similar kind of specs. The audio is loud, it's clear. It has a ruggedized touchscreen, way better than the standard phone. Battery life, you can expect a good running from this. A replaceable battery, right? So you can always remove it, replace it when the battery goes flat. Intrinsically safe for those who needs the HAZLOck approval. And of course, going to the broadband area, the Bluetooth, the Wi-Fi, the LTE, these are all the standard capabilities we are seeing on a smartphone today. So moving on, the specification, just to give you a rough idea for those who may not have seen it. There's a top display for the LMR portion. You can always see which channel you're on, what is the power setting, are you scanning, those sort of stuff, like a radio. And on the main screen, we'll be able to see all the Android functionality, right? So this is where we kind of divert a little bit, where we can connect the WAVE networks to the motor turbo networks. We talked about the interops earlier, just a little bit. Now this is where we kind of look at how it's done, right? So on the motor turbo side, the radio system, all we need to do is to add a WAVE gateway. It's simply a server, a gateway, to kind of connect the repeater systems to the cloud of the WAVE PTX cloud service. And from there, all the devices will be interconnected. So from there, we can kind of decide which talk group do we want to allow to kind of have the two systems talking together, right? So you can program those based on the requirements, and it supports, I would say, all the motor turbo types of infrastructure, right? The IP side connects, the Cat Plus, the Cat Max. and you're able to kind of talk to one another seamlessly. The next device, this is where we kind of again decided that there are a portion of market which may not need the LMR because they're running fully on the Wave, but they need a device that is more durable than their mobile phones. So this is where the Evolve comes in at a more affordable price. It still gives the kind of durability like a radio. It has the front camera and the back camera to do conference, right? It has the PDD button, dedicated PDD button, just like a radio. The screen is larger compared to the Ion. This is a 5-inch screen, simply because we kind of remove some of the LMR components within the device. It allows more space and design, right, to put in a bigger display. And again, one of the key highlights is on the back, the battery is removable, something that we always go with the kind of design terminologies, right? The design principles where the battery needs to be replaceable in the field. On the top, we see a rocker switch, very much like the TLK 100. A volume knob, like a radio, where you kind of turn on and then adjust the volume based on the position. And there is a emergency button as well, right? Just like a radio. So if you look at it, it looks like a phone, but it has the DNA of a radio. With all the experience from Motorola, we kind of add those in, right, to complement one another. So just to excuse me, just to give a kind of a 360 view from the every angles of the device. And one of the again, we have mics, multiple microphone to do the noise cancellation as well. So this is something that is focusing on the audio performance, right? So we want to make sure that the audio that goes through is always loud and clear. Now, speaking about audio, if we were to try the WAVE PTX, and coming from a long time Moto Turbo user, you will also realize that the audio quality, or I would say the clarity of the audio is way better on the Wave. Simply because of the vocoder, right? The vocoder for the Moto Turbo, DMR, yeah, we are forced, we are kind of have to use the AMBE, right? The vocoder for the DMR. Whereas on the Wave, it's a different vocoder that we are using. And the result is that you will hear that the audio is way clearer. So if you have not done this before, you can always try this, right? Just use a DMR radio, hear the audio, and then change to a Wave channel or a Wave device, hear the audio again. You'll realize that. So with that, Evolve, it comes with the suites of accessories as well. The energy, the battery, you have the high cap as well. The chargers, the vehicle chargers, the multi-unit chargers, the holster, the carry case, the audio accessories, the Bluetooth, and yeah, these are what we used to have on the radio portfolio. So we are kind of bringing all this to the Wave side as well. So this will be the last slide. Just a quick summary. What is Wave? Wave is really an wide area. It's a LTE network kind of broadband push to talk service, right? So it's subscription based. It's something that Motorola maintains the system to make sure that it's running, and users would just have to pay the monthly subscription to make sure that it's usable. And this is where we kind of complement the radio technology. Radio, as we know, that is reliable, is very focused to a particular coverage. And on the other hand, the Wave is kind of like a very wide area, nationwide. As long as you have the telco coverage, you are good to go. And of course, you have the multimedia capability. That's where, again, this thing comes in handy. Yeah, voice is king. Data is kind of something that is important as well. So yeah, that's where it kind of stay at its own positioning. With that, I have come to the end